This is CBN News Watch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm George Thomas. A sobering coronavirus milestone today. Johns Hopkins University reports that more than 200,000 Americans have now died from the pandemic. To put that in perspective, that death toll equals roughly 65 September 11th attacks, and has tripled the number of Americans that died in the Vietnam War. Today, President Trump blamed China for spreading the virus. He used his virtual speech at the United Nations to call out Beijing, which he said, quote, unleashed this plague onto the world. My colleague Heather Sells has our report.
Overall, coronavirus cases in the U.S. are declining. Still, reaching a death toll of 200,000 is yet another reminder of the breadth and depth of the pandemic. And it's not only a health catastrophe, it's an election battleground. Vice President Joe Biden blamed the president for tweeting and golfing while people were dying, and the president pointed the finger at China.
In the earliest days of the virus, China locked down travel domestically while allowing flights to leave China and infect the world.
Trump's comments came virtually as part of the United Nations annual meeting. Just a few diplomats appeared in person, while many world leaders like the president were speaking in pre-recorded speeches. Trump called on the UN to hold China accountable for its role in the pandemic and promised that the U.S. will lead in ending it.
We will distribute a vaccine. We will defeat the virus. We will end the pandemic, and we will enter a new era of unprecedented prosperity, cooperation, and peace.
Trump also touted the American economy, military, and new peace deals in the Middle East, predicting that more will come shortly.
Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain all signed a historic peace agreement in the White House, with many other Middle Eastern countries to come. They are coming fast, and they know it's great for them and it's great for the world.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thank you, Heather. Republicans are going to have the votes in the Senate to move ahead with the confirmation process for the president's nominee to the Supreme Court to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. President Trump wants to have a new justice approved before the election. Our Dale Hill reports Democrats are promising all-out war if he does, even though they can't stop the nomination from going through.
Republican leaders believe they have the votes to confirm a nominee replacing Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And the president says he won't let Democrat threats stand in his way.
Now they want to impeach me again if I nominate somebody. Go ahead, and I want them to do that.
And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the nomination process is going forward.
This Senate will vote on this nomination this year.
Democrats, including presidential candidate Joe Biden, want Republicans to wait until after the election, accusing Republicans of blatant hypocrisy.
Why not just come to the floor and say, I'm going to do what's ever best for my political party?
President Trump has already met with appeals court judge Amy Coney Barrett, a practicing Catholic who is considered the favorite to replace Justice Ginsburg. Barrett from Indiana is a former clerk for Justice Antonin Scalia. In confirmation hearings for her current judicial post, Democrats took issue with her Catholic faith.
The dogma lives loudly within you, and that's of concern when you come to big issues.
It's never appropriate for a judge to impose that judge's personal convictions, whether they derive from faith or anywhere else on the law.
Support in the Senate is growing, with Senators Charles Grassley and Cory Gardner saying they'll consider nominees. And just today, Trump critic Mitt Romney said he would support a vote. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham told Fox News Republicans have the votes, and they're not afraid of Democrat threats.
I've seen this movie before. It's not going to work. It didn't work with Kavanaugh. We've got the votes to confirm Justice Ginsburg replacement.
Democrats are threatening to go scorched earth if Republicans install a new justice and Joe Biden wins the election by packing the Supreme Court, abolishing the Senate filibuster, and granting statehood to Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. John Daniel Davidson, political editor at The Federalist, writes that Democrats just made the Constitution an election issue.
This is sort of a culmination of increasing extremism from the Democrats. They've long wanted to erode constitutional mechanisms that are a check against pure majoritarian rule.
The president is expected to name his nominee Friday or Saturday. Justice Ginsburg will lie in repose in the Supreme Court Wednesday and Thursday. On Friday, she'll lie in state in the Capitol, the first woman to do so. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
For more on this story and the latest from our nation's capital, be sure to tune into Faith Nation this evening right here on the CBN News Channel. A complaint about the number of hysterectomies at a Georgia immigration detention center sparked a Homeland Security investigation. Dawn Wooten, a nurse at the facility, is seeking federal whistleblower protection after raising concerns about the number of women at the Irwin County Detention Center who had the surgery. She also spoke out against sanitary conditions in light of the pandemic.
I was told not to tell officers that there were detainees that they dealt with day in and day out that were positive. We have families. We have lives.
An Associated Press review of the case did not find evidence of mass hysterectomies. A lawyer who helped Wooten told the Washington Post she felt there were enough to need the investigation. Donna Abbott is Senior Vice President of Global Refugee and Immigrant Services at Bethany Christian Services. She joins me now to talk more about this investigation. Donna, thank you so much for coming on the show. What can you tell us about this investigation and the concerns at this particular detention center?
First of all, the fact that the Homeland Security is going to do an independent investigation is much welcomed and should be transparent. It should be available to all, whatever the findings are. Women, incarcerated women, should have the right to have an advocate present when they're considering a life-altering surgery, especially in such a confined condition. You add to that with COVID-19, these women are even more vulnerable to severe side effects after a major surgery, and they're in congregate care. I believe that Homeland Security, ICE, has available to them some programs that allow for families, women, to be released into their community. A healthcare crisis certainly would be one of those situations that should promote their release to an alternative to detention program.
Donna, how common are hysterectomies in these centers?
I'm not aware of the statistics. I'm not a physician. I can't evaluate the appropriateness of each decision, though I think it needs to be evaluated. Often what seems like informed consent in a confined situation may not be as informed as people may at first brush believe. Women often feel compelled in those situations to respond in the way that they think is expected of them to respond. Or they may not understand the totality of the decision they're making. And thus a legal advocate, an interpreter who has an understanding of medical interpretation should be present to help guide a woman through that decision. But ultimately, if the woman were in a community setting, she could turn to her, to her faith, to her family, to help guide her through what is a very difficult decision.
Yeah, I can imagine. The concern over forced hysterectomies has really struck a nerve with the public. Why do you think this is?
Well, in the United States, we have a history of, using forced sterilizations to control minority populations, right, and control the birth rate in those populations. Whether it was with Native Americans, Puerto Rican women, African American women, and so here we have another situation where that history seems to come to the forefront when a minority group, minority women, are involved in uninformed procedures regarding their reproductive health. Again, we have to see what the findings say, what the investigation brings to light. Again, we need to insist that be very transparent so we can evaluate whether history is repeating itself.
Okay, terrific. Donna, thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. Appreciate your insights on this story. Donna Abbott with Bethany Christian Services. In other news, overnight, Tropical Storm Beta rolled into the Gulf Coast, slamming parts of Texas. The storm hit south of Houston with more than 12 inches of rain swallowing cars and bayous. Some drivers were stranded, surrounded by floodwaters for hours. One man even jumped into his kayak to try to rescue a driver swept off the road.
This is dangerous right here. So we got to lift the trucks and stuff. I'm going to kayak down and put her on the kayak and walk her back in.
That's awesome. Good Samaritans to the rescue. More than 20 people had to be rescued. Meteorologists say the slow-moving storm is still a threat for several more days. Coming up, how pro-life leaders across the country are banding together to fight for the unborn. That story in a moment. Stay with us, folks.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
And welcome back to the broadcast. As political candidates prepare to address abortion in upcoming debates, one pro-life organization is making sure Americans have all the facts they need. Focus on the Family is hosting a virtual conference exposing the lies and pain of the abortion industry and celebrating the unborn. It's called See Life 2020. During the event, prominent pro-life speakers and musicians will share stories and music written and recorded specifically for the event. It's taking place online this Saturday, the 26th at 8 p.m. Joining us now is Focus on the Family President and CEO Jim Daly with more on the battle for life in America and this event. Jim, great to have you back on the broadcast. As you know, abortion is a big topic due to the upcoming election, and now with an empty Supreme Court seat following Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing, how significant would a pro-life pick and confirmation be right now?
Well, very significant, obviously, and the pro-life movement is certainly pushing the ball in that direction. We're hoping that President Trump appoints somebody who respects life from conception to grave. That would be our hope, and we'll see what happens. But, it's no coincidence, I don't think, as a person of faith, that Saturday has come down to both the presidential pick as well as our event at 8 p.m. I think it's kind of interesting that both are happening on the same day.
Yeah, and speaking of this event, as I mentioned, it's called See Life 2020. You'll have a variety of speakers discussing a variety of topics on Saturday at the event. What will some of the conversation be like between pro-life leaders, Jim?
Well, we're building off of what we did in Times Square last year, where we had Benjamin Watson, Alveda King, who will both be with us again, along with Candace Owens and others. Especially from the African-American community. Last year, as we spoke in Times Square, one of them mentioned that more black babies were killed in New York City by abortion than were born. And unfortunately, that's true nationally. Abortion is the #1 cause of death in the black community. All other things combined don't rise to the number of abortions in the black community. So we're really raising this issue up, not just to the black community, but to everybody, that abortion takes viable human life, and we've got to end it in this nation.
Do you see the trend, the tide sort of changing in terms of people's attitude toward abortions compared to, 30, 40 years ago?
Absolutely. When you go to the March for Life in January on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, you'll see 300,000 people there. Probably 70, 80% of them are 20-somethings. And I think the most pro-life generation right now is the 20-something. So I'm very optimistic that either survivor mentality, whatever may be driving those 20-somethings to say, wait a minute, abortion seems like an immoral thing to do to our children. I'm grateful to God that he's given that awareness to this next generation. So I'm very optimistic. I think most of us now are saying abortion is not the way to go. There are many, many other options that we have available for women, and we care about the woman too. It's not just the baby, but there are some great programs that allow women to thrive who have an unwanted pregnancy.
Yeah, and especially in today's day, you're seeing a lot of folks who used to work at Planned Parenthood coming out and giving sort of an expose of what life was like really inside and the kinds of operations taking place and how women were, in some cases, their lives put in jeopardy. Talk about that real quickly.
Well, that comes straight from Abby Johnson, and she was one of our speakers in New York. She will be a speaker this Saturday as well for us, and she talks about that as a former director of Planned Parenthood, that when she was not hitting the targets, that they would give them higher quotas of abortion so they can hit their dollar figures that they needed at the clinic. And I just hope that America wakes up to what that is really saying. We're low on cash. We need to take the lives of more babies. I mean, why are we standing for this? It's repugnant.
Jim, the event this Saturday, as I mentioned, it's called See Life 2020. How can folks tune in to hear?
Yeah, they can go to the Focus on the Family Facebook page. There'll be other digital assets people can view it through, but start at the Focus on the Family Facebook page or focusonthefamily.com.
Okay, terrific. Jim, you lead a terrific organization for many, many years, fighting for life, fighting for the family in the institution of family. Always a pleasure to have you back on the broadcast. Jim Daly with Focus on